Hey everybody, this is Perch. Let's reach into the proverbial mailbag here. It says, "Hi Perch, I'm a fan of your channel. I notice that sometimes you answer questions from your fans on YouTube videos. Yeah, from time to time. I have a question I think might interest you, or at least make for an interesting video on your channel. But first, a little context. And as an aspiring comic book writer and mega fan of all things comics, I see most comic YouTube channels these days saying the exact same thing. The quality of Marvel comics has dropped drastically. I mean, no offense to any of the hardworking people who tirelessly told toil to bring us the comic book fans stories of our favorite heroes, but the truth is evident. Of the many titles Marvel releases every month, only a handful are actually worth picking up. And considering the amount they charge each book, it seems like they'll be losing more and more readers if quality doesn't improve. There have been many people giving their 2 cents on why the quality has dipped so much so badly. Some say it's because Marvel's parent company Disney is forcing to put more focus on diversity, identity politics, gender issues, woke agenda, than actual good superhero storytelling. Others say it's because all the good writers have left to do their own more profitable creator-owned indie books, and so Marvel instead left to hire screenwriters, political lecturers, journalists, and novelists who are not as familiar with Marvel characters or comics as they should be. For what it's worth, from my opinion, if we're picking between one and two, it's that second one, um, by a lot. But let's get to the rest of the mail first. One opinion has become clear in all the comic YouTube channels I've seen, an opinion that I agree with. It's just bad writing in the majority of comics Marvel are producing right now. At the moment, I only see 5 or 6 really good writers there, a couple of whom are not exclusive to Marvel. And there's only so much that Hickman, Philip Kennedy Johnson, Ben Percy can do to maintain the quality of an entire month's supply of titles. So my big question is, which comes in several parts actually, if hypothetically you're hired by Marvel's its new CEO, editor-in-chief, publisher, a nightmare day for everyone, giving you free reign to write the ship, and if Disney was willing to spill the cash to provide better rates, better working conditions, compensation for its creators, who would you hire and who would you fire? Who at Marvel Comics would you get rid of because you see him as detriment to improving the books? Who would you try and bring back to Marvel to produce top quality books? And what process in relation to storytelling would you implement to improve the quality of books? Which titles would you cancel and which would you keep? And in bringing in creators who are not currently Marvel, who would you put on which title? That's a lot there. We'll see if we get to all that. I hope you get the answer to this question of mine from one of your videos. Also, you're pretty tight with Wes from Thinking Critical on YouTube. I'm familiar with the gentleman. I think he would benefit from these questions as well. So feel free to ask him these same questions for his YouTube channel. All right. Thanks for your time. Look forward to your next video. Thanks a lot for the mail. Step one. It may be not intuitive, but I think it's critical for the entire thing. You got to take a hatchet to editorial. That's where I'm going first. I actually wouldn't even in the first 3 months of the job. I wouldn't touch the writers. I would I go out completely. You have to go completely at editorial. That's I think what needs to dramatically clean house. And it's nearly everyone. Um, and in some cases, there's some really nice people over there. Some people who have long histories, some people who are definitely tied into, comics, but how much is that really worth when you have people who, arguably have an, Alan Davis on speed dial, but doesn't use it? How much of this does it really matter when you have editors who know the business, but this is the business that we're currently being given? I think a lot of it falls apart there, completely there. I think that the lack of continuity, the lack of good planning, the fact that you get like a villain that's used twice in the same month by two completely different writers in two completely different ways, that's the stuff that's bad. And conversely, really great editors, Imashio back in the day. A lot of people go to Shooter, and I mean, deservedly so. Rest in peace. But there were a lot of good editors during that time period. Lots. Renee, amazing editor during that time period. And a great editor makes a average writer great. That's and I think that we talk about editors gatekeeping or holding back kind of bad content and problems. Well, one of the things to put more, to think about is great editors elevate writers. A lot of writers and artists, frankly, a lot of creators were, I mean, look, go back and look at Todd McFarlane's early work, Rob Liefeld's early work. Now, Todd's a little bit different, but I don't see Robin, and I could be way off. So if I'm mischaracterizing what he said, my apologies. But I don't see a lot of like praise for a lot of those early editors. And frankly, when a lot of the image guys initially jumped ship, those six, there's a lot of comments about how they were going to be free from editorial interference and all this kind of stuff. But it leaves off the fact that editors helped their careers. They worked under some editors that helped make them better storytellers, certainly as artists, but also as writing. A great editor elevates staff. So if you're going to have a great comic lineup, if you're going to, change the ship and get great talent in here again, it's not just bringing in classic creators. It's about getting a system in place that's going to create them, that's going to help nurture them, that's going to bring about the creators of tomorrow. The reality is, how many, mid-level writers today could be great if they just had some help. So if you're talking about cleaning house and paying, and where I put a lot of my initial money, I do it all in editorial at the gate. I would get that to be a absolutely perfect ship first. Then I would start going to creators. And by the way, there'd be tons of YouTube videos made about me, about what a shithead I was and how I wasn't fixing anything, and you know, why aren't X, Y, and Z. Why is Chuck Dixon not on the Avengers? And you'd get these, Perch has gone woke. But you got to fix editorial first and foremost, and you have to make that perfect. Then I think you go at creators. I don't. There's a lot of creators, of course, I personally love. I think I would really look at the business in terms of, what are my ongoing titles? What are special things I can do? I mentioned this idea before. I would get a Walt Simonson, Byrne, Davis, Mignola, if he would do it, Todd. I would try and get some of the legendary creators of the past, and I would say, let's make one major, amazing story. Hey, Rob Liefeld, let's make a 48-page, 42-page story for Deadpool that is the quintessential Deadpool story. That is you bringing it to life. I would Rob Liefeld Deadpool. I'd put you as first billing. I would do this for a lot of legendary creators, but that wouldn't be a monthly title. That would be something that could be a bookshelf edition that, I could get a lot of mileage out of. For the ongoing titles, I would pick creators and I would try and have the mentality of like, look, the business is very different right now, but how do we get a Claremont like run out of all of you with tons of subplots, hundreds of issues, a lot of, basically create a franchise. So what kind of writers are interested in doing a franchise? Joe Casey, who's a friend of the channel, who I like dearly. Uh, how can we say, look, I need you on this comic for 100 issues? So how do we plan that? Which creators are interested in that? Not all are. So how do I get for my ongoing books? I want to think about everything in terms of a 5-year run. Now, if the title doesn't sell, obviously I'm not going to drive it into the ground, but I want to begin with the premise of we're 5 years into this thing. So how do we tell that epic story? And, certainly do that across the main ones. You have your X-Men, your Spider-Man, your Avengers, your Cap, your Thor, your Iron Man. All these characters have to have that. And then I'd look for, as I said, new talent that could help me tap into markets that I've let atrophy. So kids, how do I appeal to 12 to 16-year-old boys? And what comic is going to get them excited? What character is going to do it? What writer is going to do it? What artist is going to do it? How do I make that happen? And I try and go there. I'd say, I've been kind of fucking around with horror. How do I get a true kind of horror lineup? What can I do there? How can I get to the return of the Midnight Suns era? Who are the people on that? That's how I'd look at the business. And so that's what I would do. But to me, if you don't dramatically fix editorial first as the number one priority, then you're not. It's yeah, you're not going to fix. You're not going to make it. You have to repair that. If you repair that, you do it well. There's no apathy. And that's a group I would be hardest on. I want that group coming to the office. Yes, the office. I would actually want a bullpen again for editorial, and I want them psyched to be there. I don't want them, I don't want to hear about whatever the fuck you did on social media. I don't want to hear about, any of that kind of stuff. And by the way, I'm not a slave driver of ops. Of course, there, the personal lives are important, but the spirit and the mood I want is we are going to go out there and we are going to hit a home run with every comic we get. We're going to leave DC so far behind us in the dust. It's not even they're competing in a different industry. We are number one and the only number one. How do we do it? How do we, we have the swagger. How do we then live up to that swagger? That's what I want to see. So that's in a nutshell, that's what I would do. Now, how about all of you? You all heard the same mail? What would you do? What are your first steps? Do you agree with me? And that's where I sign off. Thanks for listening.